Phosphor Dot fans, this is Earl at thelogbook.com. We're back on the Atari 2600 and back to the beginning of Activision. Believe it or not, we are playing one of the earliest, and not very well, playing one of the earliest Activision titles, Kaboom, on the 2600. This was Activision's kind of a port of an arcade game called Avalanche. This was a paddle game. And one that tended not to last too long once bombs started falling faster and faster. Start out nice and easy like that, and then it gets a bit more hair-raising. All you've got to do is miss one bomb, and the whole thing goes up in a chain reaction. Oh. Okay, so my scores seem to be averaging out in around a very specific set of numbers, which is about, I'm not getting much past 110. Oh. $147. Okay, well, best score so far. Activision's programmers all originated with the first round of programmers, the founding programmers of Activision. Had abandoned Atari over issues to do with credit, royalties, and they started their own company where the ethos of it was to more or less emulate a record label. The programmers would be identified. At Atari, the programmers were almost never identified, up until the defection happened that resulted in Activision forming. Prior to that, programmers were not identified because you didn't want other companies headhunting your people. Okay, fair enough, but you also had programmers who were basically not getting their due out of people. The royalty structure, if it even existed, it originally was negotiated with the title. Royalties were almost non-existent. And so you had some programmers who had created, million-seller classics for the ages. On average, were getting the same compensation as the people who had been stuck programming educational titles that barely sold. So, obviously, that's a recipe for unhappy programmers. And so, 4 of these programmers went off and founded Activision They were almost immediately sued on the grounds that they were supposedly, making off with trade secrets, but that did not, that didn't hold legal water, and so the doors were kicked open for basically the entire third-party video game software market. Atari basically wanted all the blades for its razor to come from Atari, and not from other companies, and that was what was behind all the legal maneuvering. But of course, as we all know, a third-party software market did come to pass, and may more or less have been responsible for the 2600, and not really for the 2600, but for Atari itself taking the nosedive that it did starting in, really at the end of 1982, but definitely in 1983. Atari's fortunes met with a downturn, to put it mildly. And eventually all sorts of entertaining stuff starts happening in this game, like your buckets get narrower, and so you don't have this wide thing that will catch all the bombs. Okay, hey, I improved on the first score by about 100 points. But it's still a very tough game. Now, if I made it sound like Activision is responsible for the market crash, that's not what I'm saying. But Activision did open the doors for more third-party software, some of which was good. Activision, I think, probably helped Atari sell more 2600s with games like Pitfall that were just top-notch. You had other publishers come in later with absolute shovelware, to be quite honest. Just bottom barrel, crap out the game as fast as you can kind of software that did not do anyone any favors. Didn't do Atari any favors. It didn't do those companies any favors, and many of them folded, within a year or two of starting up. And so it's not that Activision created the conditions of the eventual market crash of the home video game industry in the US, but it created an opening that others used, and that helped to flood the market with some, frankly, substandard software. And also, in response to the sheer number of games that were being cranked out for the 2600, Atari itself was loath to move to the next generation of hardware. So yeah, the 5200 could have and probably should have happened around 1980 because it was based on the same hardware architecture as the Atari 400 and 800 computers that were already out by then. But this game was not to blame for any of that. This game was the bomb.